Welcome everyone, I'm Bob McFarland, the software developer on the Save the Cat team. I'll be your host as we take a look at the board. What is the board? The board is quite literally a board, usually a cork board or bulletin board, sometimes even a piece of poster board, that a writer has mounted on the wall. They would write each scene on an index card and pin it to the board wherever it belongs in the story. The board gives the writer the ability to see the entire screenplay or novel laid out before them and move the scenes around until they have them arranged in just the right order for their story. The Save the Cat board is a digital version of the board that does all that and so much more. In Save the Cat, the beats are incorporated into the board so that you can plot your story by placing your scenes and other story elements into the correct beats, and so that you can know what you're trying to accomplish at each point in your story. When a scene is in a particular beat, you're trying to move the story forward with scenes and story elements that fit that beat. Now, if you haven't watched the Beat Sheets video and aren't familiar with the beat sheet, you might want to do that now. Okay, enough talk. Let's go to the demo. Save the Cat has 4 different types of projects, so there are 4 different board layouts. I have a movie project open and the workspace configured so that we can see the entire board. I'll go into more detail about how you can configure your workspace later. I've also removed all the scene cards so we can focus on the layout. The board is split up into 4 sections, 3 acts with the second act split into 2 parts. And you can see that along the bottom of each section is a layout of the beats that are in that section along with the page ranges for each beat. For example, the opening image falls on page 1, obviously. You can see there are 2 sections for the setup. Since the theme stated beat falls in the middle of the setup on page 5, we split the setup into 2 parts for the purposes of the board. How do we know the page numbers for each beat? When you start a new movie project, the page count for the beat sheet defaults to 110 pages. So the beats and board layout page numbers are based on how the beats fit into 110 pages. If you remember from the Beat Sheets video, you can change the page count and the page numbers in the beats and board layout change appropriately. Let's take a look at a novel project. Notice that the layout looks very similar to the movie board. It has the same act sections, but the individual beats are a little different. For a deeper understanding of the novel beats, check out Jessica Brody's book, Save the Cat Writes a Novel. All right, let's take a look at a half-hour TV episode. We've set up the board to allow for commercial breaks. If you're writing a TV show for a streaming service, though, you don't need to worry about commercials. But the basic structure still applies and all the beats are there. And you can see we've set the default page count to 21 pages, or approximately 21 minutes, again allowing for the commercial breaks. But if you don't have commercial breaks and your episodes are longer, just go ahead and change the page count. All right, we have one more, the 1-hour TV episode. You can see we have a teaser and 5 acts. Again, we're working around the commercial breaks, but we still have a good guide for each act that moves the story along while keeping the viewer hooked at each act break or commercial. Now that you've seen the differences in the boards for the different types of projects, let's take a look at what you can do with the board. I'll be using a movie project for the remainder of this demo, but everything you see will be applicable for all 4 types of projects. Okay, I've opened my awesome movie project and we're ready to go. As you learned in the Beat Sheets video, when you create a project, the beat sheet is created, and a scene card for each beat is created and placed in the appropriate location on the board. You can identify these by the red block in the color coding section of each card, and you'll see the appropriate tip in the description of each card. Also, as you learned in the Beat Sheets video, these beat cards are linked to the respective beat. So if you change the description for the scene card, the description for the linked beat will be updated, and vice versa. But we're talking about the board. We'll get to scene card details in another video. In addition to the scene cards that are created for each beat, optional scene cards that you have configured to be added to new projects are also created. We looked at this in the Beat Sheets video, but I'll review it here. Click the Save the Cat menu, then Master Preferences, then Preference Settings, and finally, Blake Snyder Beat Sheet Optional Scene Cards. You can see I just have the 5-point finale cards selected. These are a series of 5 cards that walk you through the finale. They include gathering the team, executing the plan, the Hightower surprise, dig deep down, and the execution of the new plan. You can add 3 extra cards in the setup section for the setup at home, at work, and at play, a couple of cards in the debate section for at home and at work, and the option you see for Fun and Games / B Story are a series of cards that alternate between Fun and Games and the B Story, but are spread out through the Fun and Games section. Similarly, the Bad Guys Close In option includes a series of cards that alternate between the internal bad guys and the external bad guys in the Bad Guys Close In section. To turn on any of the other sets of optional cards, just click the menu item. The next time you start a project, those cards will be included. Changing the setting won't affect the current project or any other existing projects though, only new projects. Okay, the board is initially sized so that no cards will overlap, so you'll just scroll around to view the entire board. But you have a lot of options for changing the viewing area and for sizing the board and the objects on the board. Let's start with putting the board into full view. Click the full view button on the toolbar, then select the board. All other sections that were visible are hidden so that the board can take advantage of the full screen. One other option to see more of the board on the screen is to increase the resolution of your display if possible. I don't have mine set to the maximum resolution so things are easier to see on the video, but I could get quite a bit more board area by increasing the resolution of my display. Now, because of the size of the board itself, we are still scrolling around to see other areas of it. If you want to see the entire board, we have an option for that. This button on the board toolbar is the Resize button. I'll click it and we get the resize options. It shows the current width and height, which you can change to tweak the size, or we can make the entire board fit into the window. I'll check Size to Fit and then click Save. Now the entire board fits in the window. Naturally, some cards will now overlap since they are fitting in a more narrow amount of space. Now, if you like, you can zoom the size of the objects on the board. Each board has its own zoom setting. You'll find the zoom option under the board menu. We get a slider that we can use to change the zoom percentage. I'll slide it down to 75%, the minimum. Now let's see what that does. The cards got a little smaller, giving you more room below them and around them. If you want to focus on a particular section of the board, you can zoom in. Let's try 150%. Wow, much larger, and we're now only viewing a small part of the board. Let's put it back to 100% for now. At any time, you can also select the default board size that will set the board to a size where the initial scene cards won't overlap. Let's see what that looks like. The board is a lot wider now. I have a suggested strategy for sizing your boards that you can experiment with. First, select Size to Fit. I'll do that now. Zoom the board to about 85% or so. Some of this depends on your monitor resolution, of course, so you'll want to experiment. Then increase the height of the board to make room to stack scene cards and other objects like this. I'll roughly double the height and click Save. Now I can stack cards like this and see the whole card. I can then just scroll up and down to work in other acts. I don't have to scroll horizontally. You'll likely want to have some room on the board because there are other things you can put on the board besides scene cards. I'll come to that in a bit. Now you don't have to have the board in full view mode. You will likely want to keep the beat section visible because you may want to make use of characters, locations, and so on. That's a little hint about what you can put on the board. Now let's see what that looks like. First, I'll restore the main window view. Then I'll hide the title and logline section. I click the Show Hide button on the toolbar, then select Title and Logline. And I'll go ahead and hide the Notes and Attachments section the same way. Now I'm going to go ahead and use Size to Fit like before. Then I'll increase the height to make more room for other objects. To really give me some room to work, I'm going to triple the height. Now I have space on the board and only have to scroll vertically, and I can really see what is going on. One quick note, to move things around on the board, just drag them around like this. Notice that as I drag the scene card around, the number in the upper right changes. This is the page number, and it changes to the correct page number based on where I'm dragging it. Before we look at other things you can put on the board, let's take a look at the list view for the board. Under the View menu, select Board, and you can see you have an option to view the board in a list layout. I'll select that. Now you have the board and everything on it in a list you can scroll through. Notice you have the acts and the beats and everything within a beat. In this case, we have the scene cards. You can move the scenes around simply by dragging them and dropping them into a new location. Watch for the blue line between items to see where you can drop a scene. I'll move the theme stated card back into the theme stated beat. All right, let's go back to the standard layout. I'll click the View menu, then Board, and Standard Layout. Before I talk about other things you can put on the board, you'll likely need to add additional scenes to your story. Well, that's easy. Click the Add Scene button on the board toolbar. The scene card will be dropped into the middle of the viewable area, so just drag it to the location where you need it. Fill in the scene heading and description, and you've got your new scene. We'll talk more in detail about scenes in another video. You've probably noticed the Add Sequence button on the toolbar. Maybe you've added 3 scenes that are part of a car chase that takes place across 3 different locations, so you have a scene for each location. To free up space on the board, you can combine them into a sequence. Okay, first I'll add the 3 scene cards. Now I'll click the Add Sequence button. Notice I have 3 options. You can add your own sequence types in Preferences if you like. For now, I'll select Add Chase. Now it's red because you can configure each sequence type with its own color. To add the scenes to the sequence, I just drag them over the sequence and drop them. I confirm that I want to add the scene, and the scene card is removed from the board and is now part of the sequence. Notice the sequence shows that I have 3 scenes in it. I can give it a title and a description if I want to. All right, something else you can add to a board are color-coded labels. Click the Add Label button on the toolbar and select a label type from the list. Just like with sequence types, you can add your own color-coded labels in Preferences. I'll select Special Effect from the list. A label is added to the board, and a window opens where I can type what I want on the label. After typing the label, I click the X to close the pop-up. Now, labels can be moved by dragging them around, and they can be resized by dragging the lower right corner like this. Of course, you can use these labels for anything, reminders, ideas, anything you need. You can also drag characters, locations, and other entities onto the board. First, I'll select the Characters tab. Then I'll drag Bob onto the board. When I drop Bob onto the board, a window pops up where I can type a description of where Bob is at this point in the story. I type the description and click the X. Now I'll drop Bob into the Catalyst section. Type the note, and click the X. I've now begun the process of tracking Bob's arc through the story. I would continue to drop Bob at relevant turning points in the story so I can make sure his story fits and flows through the beats. I won't demonstrate all of them, but you can do the same thing with locations, things, relationships, setups, and payoffs. There is another, deeper aspect to this that I'll go into in another video, but this should get you started on how to keep track of a lot of details in your story. Now that you have a lot going on your board, you may want to focus on 1 or 2 aspects of your story. For example, one particular character's story, or 2 characters side by side. Use the filter functionality for that. Click the filter button on the toolbar. There are a lot of options here, so let's start with Show Everything and Hide Everything. Obviously, Show Everything will show everything, and Hide Everything gives you a clean slate so you can select the 1 or 2 elements you would like to view. I'll click Hide Everything to clear the board. Notice that the checked items are no longer checked. I'm going to just select Bob for now. I'll click Apply, and you can now see that the only thing showing up on the board is anything that includes the character Bob. This will include scenes that Bob is in and any of Bob's board entity cards. All right, let's take another look at filtering. See that Bob is the only thing selected? If I want all main characters, I can click the Main Characters row to select it. Now all the main characters are selected. Now notice the scene color codes are listed. You can select one or more color codes to just show those on the board. I'll select Major Turns. I'll click Apply. And now we have the beat cards on the board with our main characters. You can try out various combinations to help you really focus on various elements of your story. I'm going to go ahead and bring everything back. Okay, back to Filter, then click Show Everything, and Apply. Now what if you want to get rid of an item on the board? Maybe you've decided a scene doesn't really fit any longer. Simple. Just drag it and drop it onto the trash can. Confirm the delete, and it's gone. What if I want to remove something from the board but not delete it? We have a place for that called the litter box. Just drag the item and drop it onto the litter box icon on the toolbar like this. Confirm that you want to move it and it's removed from the board. So where's the litter box? Click the Show Hide button on the toolbar and select Show Litter Box. There it is, and there's the scene I just dropped in there. If the litter box is showing, you can just drop items directly into it like this. When an item is dropped into the litter box, it is dropped into the same beat section where it was on the board. That way you can know where it came from. And of course, it's easy to put something back onto the board. Just drag it back out of the litter box and place it wherever you want it, like this. There you go. I've talked about how you can have multiple versions of your boards. There are two ways to create a new version. You can add a new blank board or make a copy of your current board. I'll start by creating a new blank board. I'll click the Add Board button on the board toolbar and confirm that I want to add the board. Now I have a blank canvas to work with. Notice, however, that the litter box just filled up with all the scene cards. Since you started with a blank board, you still need to have your scenes available to place onto this new board. I'll just drag them over. Placing them onto this board doesn't affect their position on the other version of the board. But remember, they're still the same scenes. If you change the scene itself, it will be changed for all boards. So if you want to drastically change the scene, I would suggest moving it to the litter box or deleting it and then adding a new scene. If you add a new scene on one board, you will have access to it on your other boards as well. When you switch to another board, you'll find the new scene in the litter box, ready to be used in this version of the story. All right, let's take a look at the other option for creating a new board. Instead of starting with a blank slate, you can copy your board, then move things around from there. I'll click the Copy Board button on the board toolbar, verify that I want to copy it, and now I have an exact copy. The name even includes the word copy so you know. Speaking of the names, you can change the name of a board if you like. Just highlight the name and type a new one. Confirm that you want to change it, and the board now has a new name. Now that we've added a new board, there may come a time when you want to delete a board. Click the Board menu, then Delete Current Board. Confirm that you want to delete it, and it's gone. Now if you only have one board, of course, you can't delete it. You've got to have at least one board. Okay, that's the board. I hope you found this video helpful. If you want an in-depth understanding of the board, the series of Save the Cat books are an excellent resource. And as usual, be sure to check out our other videos. And remember, if you have any questions, suggestions, or run into any issues, drop me an email at tech@blakesnyder.com. Be sure to visit our website at savethecat.com. And as Blake Snyder said in his best-selling book, Save the Cat, the board is perhaps the most vital piece of equipment a screenwriter needs to have at his or her disposal.